They laughed when he walked into the room. Not because of anything he said, not because he did something funny, but simply because of how he looked. A short man, barely touching 5 feet, wearing an old suit, holding a briefcase that seemed too big for his hands. Every eye turned. Some smirked, some whispered, others didn't even bother to hide their laughter. He stood there, silent. No anger, no reaction. Just that calm, unreadable look in his eyes. The kind of look that people mistake for weakness. But it wasn't weakness. It was patience. The kind that only people who've been through a lifetime of humiliation can master. For years, he had heard the same words. You're too small. You don't fit the image. You can't be taken seriously. Every insult carved a new scar, but every scar built his strength. He walked to the front desk of the company, the same company where he had once applied for a job and was rejected before even finishing the interview. The receptionist recognized him vaguely but couldn't place his face. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked politely. He smiled softly. "Yes, I'm here for a meeting with Mr. Collins. Tell him." "Mr. Araf has arrived." Her eyes flickered with surprise. "You have an appointment?" "Yes," he said. "At 9 sharp." She nodded and picked up the phone. The employees nearby whispered and giggled. They thought he was a vendor or maybe some supplier trying his luck. A few even mimicked his walk as he took a seat in the lobby. Minutes later, Mr. Collins, the proud, tall, loud CEO, came out of his office. He looked down at Arav and smirked. "Oh, you must be the investor's assistant," he said. "Please wait. The real meeting will begin when your boss arrives." Arav looked up at him. Still calm. "I am the one you're meeting," he said. The laughter around the lobby grew louder. Collins forced a fake smile. "Of course. I'm sure this will be interesting." They entered the conference room. The big table, the shiny glass walls, the smell of expensive coffee. Everything was designed to intimidate people like him. But nothing could shake Arav anymore. He remembered being thrown out of this same office 5 years ago. Back then, he had applied for a small position. They didn't even check his resume. One manager laughed and said, "We need men who can stand tall in front of clients, not children." That day, Arav walked out quietly, and that same day, he decided that he would never walk into another office to beg for a job again. He worked days and nights building his own startup, from a one-room office, using second-hand computers and sleeping on the floor. People laughed then too. But he had learned something powerful. The laughter of others doesn't define your future. Only your response to it does. In 5 years, his startup turned into a rising tech company, silent but deadly. His software became essential to multiple corporations, including this very company. And when their finances began to sink, it was Arav's firm that secretly started buying their shares. One after another, piece by piece, until the empire that once rejected him now quietly belonged to him. And today, he wasn't there to impress anyone. He was there to claim what was already his. As the meeting began, Collins started presenting numbers, profits, and strategies, trying to sound important. Arav listened, nodding occasionally. After a while, he placed his briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside was a thick folder with documents. "Mr. Collins," Arav said softly, "you might want to stop explaining. You're working for me now." The room went silent. "What are you talking about?" Collins asked, trying to laugh it off. Arav slid the papers across the table. "Here are the ownership documents. As of this morning, 87% of this company belongs to my corporation." The tall man's smile vanished. The others in the room exchanged shocked looks, the same people who laughed a few minutes. Igo now stared at him in disbelief. "Impossible," Collins whispered. "Check the signatures," Arav replied. "It's very possible." He leaned back in his chair, calm and collected. "You see, while you were laughing at me, I was quietly buying your empire, one share at a time." Collins sat down slowly, speechless. Arav continued, his voice low but filled with years of contained emotion. "You see, Mr. Collins, life has a strange sense of balance. The ones you look down on often rise higher than your imagination. The same height you used to measure me once. I used to measure your arrogance." The room was still. Arav stood up, adjusted his coat and said, "Meeting over." He walked out. The same short man they once mocked, but now every step echoed louder than thunder. Outside the glass walls, the employees watched him go. No one laughed this time, not one whisper. Only silence, because power doesn't need height, respect doesn't need permission, and success doesn't need size. It only needs belief. Arav stopped at the main door, turned slightly and said just one line to the receptionist who once ignored him. Always be kind to people. You never know who owns the ground you're standing on. He left. The security guard opened the gate for him respectfully. His black car waited outside, not just any car, but a luxury model that shined like authority itself. As he sat inside, his reflection appeared on the glass. He wasn't smiling arrogantly. He was calm, content, and peaceful, because victory doesn't always come from revenge. Sometimes it comes from proving the world wrong without saying a word. The car drove off, leaving behind the building where his story once began, a story that turned humiliation into legacy. He looked out of the window, whispering softly to himself. They laughed at the short man, but didn't know he owned the whole company. And somewhere deep inside him, a lifetime of pain finally turned into pride. He reached home late that night. The house wasn't huge, but every inch of it was built from hard work and silence. He poured himself a cup of coffee, sat on the balcony, and looked at the city lights below. The same city that once looked down on him now stood beneath him. And in that moment, he understood, and being small was never his weakness. It was his strength, because it taught him how to rise quietly while others wasted their time laughing. He remembered his father's words. Son, never fight the world to prove your size. Just let your success speak. It'll sound louder than any insult. He smiled, whispering, You were right, Dad. And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel short anymore. He felt limitless. Days later, newspapers wrote about the takeover. The headlines were bold. Unknown investor buys multi-million-dollar company in a single week. But they didn't know the story behind it. They didn't know about the boy who once stood outside the same building, holding a file, waiting for a chance, only to be told he wasn't tall enough for the job. Now the same building had his name engraved at the entrance. People started messaging him, apologizing, congratulating, pretending they always believed in him, but Arav didn't reply. He didn't need validation anymore. He had already proved everything, not through words, but through action. And that's what true power is, the silence after victory. He walked through the company lobby a few days later. Everyone stood respectfully as he entered. The same corridors that once echoed with laughter now echoed with footsteps of respect. He paused near the elevator, looking at his reflection again. Nothing had changed about his height, but everything had changed about his worth. He pressed the top floor button and whispered, The view was always meant for me. I just had to climb differently. The elevator doors closed slowly, leaving behind the crowd who once mocked him. And as the doors shut completely, one truth remained. It's not your height that defines you, it's your rise.